All right, we are live. I am here with Mike M, Dr. Mike M, who is a who he it is a doctorate in clinical psychology. Yes, a Psy.D. clinical psychology.
That's
Okay,
correct. Yep.
which is absolutely wonderful because a lot of the stuff that I tend to tackle on the channel, at least recently, is how things have sort of evolved, involves, at least in some measure, some element of psychology. There's also, narratology, ludology, all that sort of stuff. But in some measure, oh, hey, Nick, thanks for being here. Yeah, Rep, thanks for being here. Appreciate you guys. So the way this started, and if you'll pardon me while I ramble for a moment, the way this started is you and I really just started talking, like actually intensely discussing things recently. We met via a mutual friend, Heath, on his channel, and we're constantly in the chat, we're in the Discord. And then I started a channel and you began to follow what I was doing, and that sort of started these conversations. Very recently, you started to get into exploring 4D and what that is and what that means. And then this is definitely from, look, I don't mean to say like outsider, like, in group, out group, but like from an external perspective, I'll say external, because there is a group of individuals who are, it's a core 4D group. They have a Discord. They have their different channels. They discuss 4D. They play 4D. That is their style of play. That is the culture of play that they have. And you became very interested in this style as a more, and I hate using this word, but we use it anyway because people understand it, an immersive way of playing a role-playing game, because that seemed to be their core focus. In fact, I just had a conversation with them earlier today about like really what is the differentiating aspect. If you could pick one, what's the differentiating aspect between 4D and other styles? And I think that ultimately what it boiled down to, what everyone was most comfortable with, was that their goal is to reduce roll distance as defined by Goffman. So that's what they aim for. They want to create as little cognitive distance between their own selves in reality and their characters in play. So you've been taking a look at all of this, and you have been taking notes, fantastic notes. And in fact, sometimes when I go to the Discord and I say, hey, I have a friend, because several of the 40 guys are here. So Nick is one of them, or Nicholas, I'm sorry. I shouldn't do that. Nicholas is one of them. Yakrep's one of them. And they I'll go into the Discord frequently. I'll say, hey, a friend has a question about 4D. Can you give me an answer? You're usually the friend that I'm asking after.
Probably.
And so, yeah. So when I say, hey, Mike said thank you, this is Mike who said thank you. And I think that what you have said about doing, gotcha. It is a very bad habit that I have. I don't let people call me Jim. It's James or Bacon usually is what I'm comfortable with. And then I will be the worst with shortening people's names. So deepest apologies. That wasn't intentional. I need to get a better handle on it. So I will not do that moving forward. Nicholas. So I think that it's what you're doing is valuable. It's compiling a bunch of notes at the moment. But it's from an external perspective, I think, with the intent of informing others who have that same external perspective. So instead of having someone internal to the practice saying, this is what we do, this is how we do it, you are observing, you're compiling, and the goal is to, through, obviously, I think, eventually through the filter of the internal approval, right? Or internal accuracy. I don't know. To really kind of be able to distribute a more codified idea on what 4D is, what it attempts, what it is successful at doing, and how it can, depending on what you desire, you get, what desire you have for your game, how to get there through this particular style. So And there's my ramble. I will give
It's a
you
solid ramble.
Yes, thank you, appreciate it. So now you and I have played, like we have played together, and I don't think we've ever really played together in dedicated 4D games. Most of the time, it's been like 2D, like 2.5D sort of stuff. Not for anything that we've done. That's just the way it sort of shakes loose in specific circles. But we have had experience role playing with one another. I think like in the moment when you're given that opportunity to be in character, I think that you do a very, very solid job of staying in character and speaking in first person and describing what you're doing, explaining like the motion of your character. I think you're very good at that. Now, I am by no means the qualifier of what good 4D is. I would, toss that more at the feet of the guys in the Discord. But in my view, you do well. So I guess what kind of attracted you to this particular this project? What was it about the 4D style that made you go, you know what, I want to know more, I want to know definitives, and I want to be able to explain to others who have these questions?
So I guess the short answer was the goal of a deeper level or a more sophisticated level. I'm not sure what word I'd want to use, of immersion was important in that style. And that intrigued me because when I, sit back and watch my own gaming group, which I've been gaming with for over 25 years, and when I like examine when are we as a group, the most in it, it's when are we most immersed. It's always been when we're being the characters that we created, and everything else sort of goes away, if you will. Like all the numbers, all the other extraneous stuff around the game, kind of, puts into the background. And when I then hit upon, I think basically from you, that there's this thing called 4D, and essentially, you know, what it might be about, got really interested because it sounded like there could be a lot of things to learn from that style of play that could be carried over into a game, where, you know, any game you play, but, like with my own gaming group where we go from 2D into like 3D, sort of vacillate between those levels pretty frequently. And in other games too, like when I play online with you, for example.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what it was. It was the chance to get a window into um, that reduction of the roll distance, as you and I were talking about before the stream, back in the Palacious Green Room.
Yes.
By the way, I should welcome
catered
people to the basement here. I apologize that the scenery isn't as great, but it's where
no worries. I'm always only ever parked on my couch in my living room, so no worries at all. No worries at all. So recently, I guess to get more specific about the conversations that you and I have, or the styles of conversations that we've been having, you came to me recently, and I'm going to reference our Discord messages only lightly. So we had a conversation about direct and indirect co-creation, which was a direct act, which was an indirect act. So what, I guess how do you recall that conversation starting? I think that you came to me, right? And you asked me, like, what was it? What frame does co-creation take place within? And then it sort of broke down from there.
Yeah, I think we were chatting about co-creation in general, and 4D role play sort of is always in the background of what we've been talking about. And I started thinking about co-creation and what really differentiates 4D co-creation from co-creation that, say, I have in my game that is not 4D. I mean, but we have elements of co-creation. And what occurred to me, and just so the people who watch this all know, I'm not like wedded to these ideas. These are still flipping around in my head as kind of loose thoughts. But what occurred to me maybe was the idea that if that the direct co-creation is when it comes out of the player's, the self frame, if you will. And direct co-creation is when the the insertion into that shared space happens using the character, right? And I felt like with 4D role play, it's been my observation and watching a lot of actual plays, taking a lot of notes on those, watching a number of resources that you've shown me, that distinction helps because I see a lot more what I would call, and what I'm guessing at because I can't know for sure, are that direct 4D, so direct co-creation, and that seems to be a hallmark, at least in part, of to my eyes, of that style of role play. And because in my games that I've experienced with my gaming group or whatever, we do insert things through our character. We're just not, but we're definitely not playing 4D, games. And so there has to be, I thought, something that is, I don't want to say richer. That's not the more robust idea of co-creation than than just what I was doing with my gaming group.
Yeah, and I think it's a very interesting question, and this actually came up again in a conversation. I think it was Big Bad RPG who mentioned this in Discord, that any game can have co-creation in it. That's not the distinction between 4D and other styles.
Mm-hmm.
The distinction between 4D and other styles is the wanting to reduce that roll distance as much as possible. And that, as much as possible is a phrase that does a lot of heavy lifting. Because, depending on system, depending on the table, you're only going to be able to get a reduction so far. Some you're going to be able to get farther than others. So it really is, it's dependent on a lot of different interlocking pieces. But specifically, hey Z, good to have you. So the co-creation then becomes a supporting strut for the idea of role reduction. And the goal of co-creation is to avoid having to back out of the character frame or key into the player frame. Think about what you're going to create. What does your character need in the moment from a third person perspective? Mm-hmm. Then insert that into the shared imagined space, or even worse, ask the GM, is this here? Is this not here? Can I do this? Like all that kind of stuff. And instead just sort of, and it's weird. It's likely a simultaneous frame key. So you're not actually, you're not out of the character frame. You haven't switched focus to a different frame. You're still in the character frame, but you also then engage the player frame in order to put something in the shared imagined space. No questions needed. No roles asked for. It is there now, and I am interacting with it as a way to quickly provide your character with something that you want to interact with without having to dissolve or widen the gap, the cognitive, divide between you and your character in so doing, by asking a GM or by, keying into a different frame entirely before interacting. And so we kind of had that conversation about direct and indirect co-creation, and I found that to be very interesting because you, as a clinical psychologist, you were able to engage the material in a more comprehensive way than I had been able to, how I was thinking about this. And so because you know that you are always aware of the reality. You're always aware of
Right.
yourself. There's always that frame that's involved. You are always acting from that frame, whether you're acting in the character frame or in the rules frame or in the whatever other frame you are also keyed into. And so that's really where the application of direct indirect comes from. It comes from your real self into these different frames. Now, a question I guess that would come up would be, so I am acting in the player frame. I'm keyed into the player frame when I am doing things like creating a backstory for my character. I am a player. I know I am going to be in a game. And so either player or game frame, whatever you want to call it, I am going to craft a backstory for my character, if that's something that we're doing. Is that direct or indirect? And what is the differentiation then between doing that in the character frame versus doing that? Because it's still a different frame, right?
Yeah. So I love this question because I've been thinking about this since I wrote this to you in Discord and suggested this off the cuff, if you will, because you're right. One of the problems, and there might be many, so don't misunderstand that I'm not saying there's not many problems with my idea here.
Sure.
One of the problems with it is that it requires knowledge of the mental activity of the person, and you need to know sort of what's their thought train, what's their what schema, to use a psych word, they're operating out of, and that is impossible to know just by mere observation. That's why when I mentioned earlier that I was seeing co-creation, that I was guessing at the idea that it was from one frame versus another. I don't know. Right.
Yeah.
And that's key. So I think what you're putting your finger on is a real struggle with my idea, because if someone writes a character backstory, I would say that until the character, I would guess is a better way to say this, or assume, until the character becomes sort of its own representative schema in their mind, it's probably, which the backstory helps develop, it's probably, a more direct creation. But I think that the more I think about it, the more that might be the case. Although if you create a character and you've been thinking about it and you write the character backstory from the character's perspective and things like that, then certainly I would say that is much more of that indirect co-creation going on with the game. But once again, it's a real fatal flaw of the idea, because it's hard to ever know another person's sort of mental process that way.
Yeah, it's going to kind of rely on self-report data from someone who is aware of all of this stuff in order to really kind of even attempt to drill down on, and who knows if that's even really possible with a broad base, because you had even discussed how you could go about putting this in a study or acquiring the data, and it becomes a very unmanageable mess very quickly.
Yeah, I mean it conceptually, is it doable? Sure. But the money you'd have to throw at it is a lot.
Yeah.
And and once again, that doesn't necessarily mean it's not worth doing. It just means I can't do it in my current situation.
Sure.
But it's one of those things too where it loses then some of its value if you can't verify it in a more meaningful sense than the theoretical. You, although, had a different way to look at it. You looked at it in a temporal way, which I found really interesting as well.
Yeah, it was a matter of when the creation takes place. So does it? Well, first, before we get to that, I want to do two things. First, I want to say hello to Daniel. Hello, Daniel. Thank you for hanging out. And also, Nicholas says it's always stuff that wouldn't make you groan if it were brought up in a movie. Meaning the things that you can find within a scene, the things that are sort of innocuous in the moment for you to place within this. Like if you're in a kitchen, there's a kettle on the stove. If you're in a bathroom, there's some toothbrushes hanging up in the little porcelain rack. If you have one of those, maybe it's in a cup, whatever, however you want to create that within the scene, that's something you can go and interact with. And he says, I'd even say most co-creation is stuff you wouldn't notice being introduced in the first place, maybe is what was meant. But I agree with that. So we're not talking about like, painting with a broad, grand brush about inventing new gods for the setting and saying a mountain just erupted under this city that you like, it became a volcano under a city that you're supposed to be trying. Not that sort of stuff, but like the smaller, almost mundane, doesn't have to be mundane. And there are different, specifics involved with how co-creation works, the sort of give and take between the GM. You can create it. The GM can then also affect it in their way in order to, react in their capacity. So I wanted to address those two before we move on. But
that's a good point. I just want to interject on Nicholas's point that I think it was, and I'd have to check my notes to know for sure, but Max from Reactionary Principles, I think he's talked about it in terms of filling in the blanks in a scene. So I think that seems in line with what he was referring to there. This idea that if you open a desk drawer, there's paper, and so if you open the desk drawer and you get out a piece of paper, it would make sense in the context and the setting and the tone of the game you're playing and of the setting that you're at when the scene occurs. So that makes sense to me. But so back to your idea, you're about to talk about this temporal idea of co-creation.
Yeah, so it's
pretty interesting.
So it seems like co-creation happens in, at least in this moment that I'm saying this, that I have, turned this over in my head a bit. And maybe there are more ways than just these two, but two ways co-creation takes place, or two times at which co-creation takes place. It either takes place prior to a scene in the past, such as in the case with the backstory, or it takes place in the scene. So there's a past potential and a present potential of this style of mechanism within the game. And I think that it's an important one to discuss. Why do I think it's important? Because I think that a lot of the times there is an idea out there. I think it's a very pervasive idea that discusses things like, or rather expectations. It establishes expectations that something's not there unless the GM puts it there. And, there are some players that just won't interact with things that they haven't been told are there. There are some GMs that won't let you put things in their scenes, right? And I think that all of that, that pre-creation is, players still get to participate in a small measure, whether or not they're making their backstories. Creating a character is a measure of pre-creation, right? But in the moment, in the scene, as the character, keyed to the character frame, and then also keying to the player or game frame in order to place something there, it's a more advanced sort of immersive, and again, I don't like that word, but people know what I'm talking about when I say it. It's a more immersive style. So if your goal is to if it's to hurry things up, like if you're taking too much time at the table and like it's great to have players just put things there and start doing whatever they're going to do with them, because having to ask a question, having to come to a decision, like that all takes time. So it's great if you can just do it that way. But also it really is beneficial. And I say this with firsthand knowledge. It really is beneficial to be able to look down, notice something, and then begin interacting with it. Mm-hmm. In the headspace of your character, you still, it's like and this is a phenomenon that I have read about that can't remember the name of in the moment, and I haven't said anything about it on the channel, or maybe like once or twice, but it's a matter of like knowing that like you're occupying two headspaces at once. You know you're this character, but you also know that you're not this character really. You're mm-hmm. yourself really. So there's a little bit of that goes on, but it's a much more fluid way, in my view and in my experience, to approach role playing. I think that's a dead end. I think I'm making that statement. There's nowhere else to go with it.
I don't know. I think that one of the things I liked about your temporal view, that was to me a strength, a super strength of it, is that you don't need special understanding of someone's mental state. You can label it merely by its happening. You know what I mean? And that to me is a real strong element of it. You know, the thing I was trying to do when I was talking about direct and indirect was strengthen the case for a kind of co-creation that I thought was unique, at least from an outsider perspective, to that 4D style. But the more I'm talking about it, the more I see the cracks, if you will, of the foundation here. But I think that the thing with this present and past creation is, once again, when I reflect on games that I've played in, I see those going on. And as you pointed out, co-creation isn't necessarily unique to a 4D style, but it's certainly part of the 4D style, so that you can maintain that immersion, right? And I find that, like I said, it's not unique to it, but it's a key part, and that I find really interesting, especially when I start thinking about this, like the nature of co-creation, and of course the importance of the process of a 4D role play experience, where there is a session zero where discussions on scope of co-creation might occur, or discussions on the nature of the setting and the mood and genre and things like that, so that everybody's agreeing, building, if you will, together this shared space where they're going to play the game, and have shared expectations about what happens in those scenes and in that space. I think that's super, not only vital, but interesting sort of thing that is needs to be part of that style of play in order for it to, in my opinion, seem to work smoothly.
Yes, and I find that this particular, like this style, this the level of immersion, or the level of roll distance reduction that takes place during these particular games, I find personally, and I've said this in other places, but I find it to be, it's taxing, right? Like if you do it for too long, if you do it for such a long period of time, it becomes very mentally tiring. Like I have gotten up from role play sessions before where I've been doing as much as possible 4D role playing and just been absolutely sapped, like lay down in bed, go to sleep, sapped. And it's so I imagine that is something that will get better over time as I do it more frequently. But like there's almost like a physicality to it.
No, there is. What you're describing in my field, right, would be this experience of intense focus on a relatively heavy cognitive load. I mean, you're self-monitoring all of what you do and say because you're not yet in the habit of just being in the character. So you're doing a lot of self-monitoring and you're adding sort of another layer, if you will, another filter to what goes in and what comes out because it's not yet second nature. It's because you're learning. You know, it hasn't become it hasn't reached an automatic state. Your automaticity, which is that key word there, is still, is still latent. It's not there yet. And I imagine that like any skill, you get more automatic at it and it eases that load and you're less self-monitoring and less intensity of focus, at least on that part of it, more intensity of focus than on the actual role play. And I imagine that it does get somewhat easier. At least, you know, that part would.
Automaticity. That's a new vocabulary word.
Yeah, it's the
speed, writing it down.
Yeah, it's the speed. Basically, it's the speed at which you recall and are able to use information.
Okay.
So if you learn like 2 + 2, and anybody can say 4, it's because we have high automaticity. Like we don't have to think about it. We have to sit there and count fingers. We just know it's 4, right? If I were to ask you a more complex question, that has lower automaticity, you'd have to really think and tease it out and carry the 1 and all that kind of thing.
Okay. So high automaticity is something that the 4D style is also aiming at then, because I have been using the phrase system familiarity or system fluency, where you want to learn. Z has some things here. Let's actually get to Z's comments first before I get into the automaticity and system fluency. So Z says, there's even co-creation to the level of the GM introducing a weapon and then the player character calling it by its name. That is a Nomad cannon, and the GM didn't even have to come up with the name. Yeah. So there's a lot of that. It's a very fluid sort of thing. It's you are inserting something into the shared imagined space that then others are able to interact with in this sort of real way. And in the 4D style, because there is a critical reduction of crosstalk and table talk, anything that someone speaks into the shared imagined space, there is no debate about it. There is no confusion. That is just the way it is. That is something they put into the shared imagined space. And so now that is a part of the reality of the world. That in particular, I actually really like. But that's a digression.
Well, no, it's an insertion of an object that now has presence, right, in the world.
Yes.
That would be you can't deny it any more than I can deny that there's a microphone in front of my face.
Right.
And that is interesting because we're talking about this imagined space that we're all sort of imagining together. And when someone can insert an object that then has physicality in that world, that's unique. That's interesting.
Yeah, and I think like even tangentially, there's because it's not a rule by committee, right? Because it's not, I'm going to do this. Oh, well, you should really do that. Oh, what are you? Well, you should wait for me to do this, and so then you could do like these conversations that happen in crosstalk and table talk at the different table. I'm just going to go with table talk because they're two different things. People know they're two different things. I'm just going to say it the once. But with that sort of rule by committee, you can really, really sort of unintentionally or in the worst case scenario, intentionally negatively affect someone's experience by having the group second guess something that they've decided that they want to do. And so now they're subject to peer pressure, and maybe that's not something that they want to do. But in this particular style, because there's none of that, it's kept to a critical minimum or eliminated. I mean, I wouldn't even say the ideal is elimination. It is just eliminated. GMs do not react to out of character questions. It is just absolutely strictly eliminated. There's none of that. There's no, you don't care. You want to do something as your character in the moment because No, not because, but when you do, you know, no one's going to second guess you. No one's going to tell you what better move you could have made. No, because that's absolutely expressly forbidden at the table. And I think that that's beneficial. I think it's beneficial to new players, first of all, because they're not going to be under threat of this, someone else taking their turn for them, which is that's a classic Crispy phrase. No one's going to start talking when it's not their turn. And I just think that I think there's high value to be placed there.
Absolutely.
So.
I think that's, when you were talking about that influence someone might experience on their turn for doing some other action other than what they want, not only does that completely ruin immersion because, you're killing everything that is going on with this character's focus on their character. But I think it also introduces another set of, for lack of a better way to say it right now, filters of, you have to think about, well, will this please the group, right? In character, out of character, pleasing the group. Is it going to be okay? Do I really want to make an enemy or make a call that might go wrong or whatever? And so, yeah, I think that is a critical thing that 4D roleplay has, that actually protects, players out of game, protects them.
Yeah, and so, and this, I think, and we're now like way off track what I originally was going to get.
Well,
but I don't. It doesn't matter. I think this is an very interesting path to go down. So let's go down it.
Okay.
You're not hurting anyone's feelings. If calling back to the idea of, oh, well, this is what my character would do. That's a conversation that you have at the table out of character. What? I'm doing it because that's what my character would do. The reason you're having that conversation is because someone's annoyed or dissatisfied or upset or angry at the decision that you're making. It's likely affecting their character. And so you have this conversation. And in the context of having this conversation, if you follow through and do that anyway, you become a big jerk. But without that table talk, if it's not what your character would do, it's what your character did, then there's far less affliction to visit on anyone else at the table. And it's, that it's in the context of the shared imagined space. And I think that this is a very important point to make. Z says, a key point of why there is no debate is because they demand high trust tables. Similar to playing in a sandbox with your friends, you don't want the other kid to take your red truck. Agree. And at the same time, like, while you're playing it, because it's a high trust table, you sort of have this shared imagined space almost cordoned off, right? This is the reality that we are exposed to at the moment, but it's not actual reality. That's back here at the table. And it's, I think, a more solid foundation for that sort of character exploration. Because you're not worried about hurting someone's feelings because you're not doing the most optimal thing, or because you are a scoundrel and you've decided to steal gold from the other player characters while they're asleep. Like, it's just, that is your character. This is what your character did. And also baked into the 4D style is the idea of you have a wind down after the game, and you discuss what was good, what was bad, what shouldn't have happened, what could have happened differently, all those sorts of things to improve play moving forward.
Yes. Yeah, no, that's another good point. What's this?
It's just him being funny.
And
then here's another one. So here's PH saying, you became a big jerk was the first thing I heard when I got here. Hey, PH, thanks for showing up.
Yeah. Bacon called me a big jerk. No.
That is not what happened.
No, I that's actually, I'm glad you raised that, because to me, there's, and this is once again my observations, not saying I have the lock on truth here, but to me, there's like three distinct like parts of this, right? There's that session 0 where the shared imagined space is created, where scope and setting and all these things are developed so everybody's on the same page. There's the actual play part, and then there's that feedback part at the end where there's kind of a debrief and that feedback where it's baked into the cake that you're going to discuss these things. And I think that that's actually one of, if not, I think it's really one of the pieces of that style of role play that I really cherish, because, when I run games, even for my high trust group, who I've been playing with for ages, if I want feedback as a GM or as a player, I usually have to ask individuals for it and this and that. It's not baked into the process, if you will, which I think is a huge strength of that style of role play. And I that immediately, not only the nature of the feedback being present, but the nature of the kind of feedback, the way the feedback is expressed, the way the feedback is taken, and it's, to me, it's really a gem.
I agree. I've been a part of, sadly, at this point in time, few sessions, but I am endeavoring to get more involved and have more of these sessions. And at the end, there is a communal concern and drive to uplift everyone. Everyone wants everyone else to have the best experience they can at the table. They take the hobby very seriously. It's very serious fun, right? And it is an extremely, I am going to say, satisfying and gratifying experience to, in the moment, because I do this all the time, I will in the moment know I messed something up. I described it poorly, or I described something that my character was thinking, which you wouldn't know because you don't know what I'm thinking. You only know what I've done. Like those sorts of like follies that you do in the moment, and you correct yourself and you move forward. But at the end, being able to express that, say, I need to get better at not telling you what my character thinks, just telling you what my character does, or I need to get better at, Nicholas, I was in one of his games once, and it technically wasn't a 4D game, but we were very much trying to treat it that way. It was, none of us were familiar with the rules. It was a sort of a playtest thing. Hopefully you don't mind me talking about this, Nicholas, or Z, or Eli. But there was a situation where I misunderstood a rule and we just rolled with it. I just, I threw a fireball or whatever it was I was doing. We rolled with it. It happened. We moved forward, and then it was addressed at the end. It was like, hey, I didn't really know what you were trying to do here. I think maybe it was a lack of understanding for the rule or what was happening or what was on your character sheet or that sort of thing. And I didn't recognize that in the moment. I just don't think I just wasn't aware that I was, transgressing a rule or transgressing a mechanic. And I find that, because I don't want to, right? I want to play proficiently. I want to play with system familiarity, and I want to do it in a way that is beneficial to myself, but to also all others at the table. And this particular after session, I find I get a lot out of it. I think that it's very valuable.
Well, it's part of how people improve in general, right? The feedback process in education is you want the feedback to be timely, meaning that it happens as close to the activity as possible, right? You want the feedback to be purposeful, which is to say it gets at what you did that needs to improve, as well as what you did that was pretty good. And the feedback also has to be stated in a way that's helpful. And in a high trust game, it's hard to state things in a way that's not helpful. Because you believe that you have a default belief that no matter what they say, it's going to be, it comes from a place of helpfulness and improvement and greater enjoyment. And that's a critical way to see someone in that desirable way.
Yeah, and it's and I think it offers a really solid, but I think often unseen counterbalance to this idea of vetting your players. That is, it is chanted like a mantra among 40 players: vet your players, because you don't want to encounter a situation where any number of bad things. Think of any number of bad things that can happen at a table. You just don't want to go through with that. So you want to vet your players. But the counterbalance to that is providing this very valuable feedback to build players up as you go from session to session, or from game to game, or from GM to GM, or however you're doing it. And I find that to be, I think that, that is because it can be seen sometimes as elitist to say, oh, vet your players, or I'm not going to play with this certain kind of person, or I'm not going to play. But it's like they are also likewise helping to develop the type of player that they want to play. Is brilliant. I am at no loss of praise for that aspect of 4D. I could go on for a little while.
No, I agree. I mean, it's the reason why I play with my friends that I've had for ages now, is because, they're a known quantity, if you will, and we don't have those problems as a result. We've been friends forever out of game, we're friends in game. It makes for an easier experience, and some of the horror stories you see, other people have, just don't have.
Yeah, it's Z said here, we are competitive fun lovers, competitive role play, hardcore role players. Some would say aggressive role players. That's a phrase that's been coined recently that I find just absolutely hysterical. But it's like, it's the adult table, right? You're sitting at the adult table and you're playing a 4D game with adults that treat it very seriously, very serious fun havers. But it's just a wonderful experience. Obviously, I'm gushing over it. I love the style. I love the guys involved. It's, whatever.
Yeah,
that's me. That's me. So Uriah showed up. Hello, Uriah. Thank you for hanging out. He says, hey, all. One of the cool things about 4D is that it's not a monolith. There are circumstances where the internal monologue is applicable to express in the situation. A good example is my PC in Crispy's game. It's interesting to explore all the different avenues. It is, I agree. And I think that sometimes I probably get inside my own head on that. Like, in the moment, it's as a character explaining what I'm thinking, and then immediately like dropping from keying to the character frame and going, oh, I shouldn't have done that. And now it's like I'm all the way back in reality. I'm out of the character frame. I'm out of the game frame. I'm like, there's no social frame because now I'm locked in my own head. And I think that I need to just sort of like stop, just do it, let it happen. If it's something that someone has a problem with, we will thankfully discuss it at the end.
Right.
And you can just kind of let it happen that way.
Well, that makes it a safety net, right?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. PH says, I have to show this video to my toxic group. Only one of them is a lawyer, but all of them argue shameless to bend the rules as much as they can. Yes. Yes. You should show this to them.
I would hope that this would help.
Yes.
I can say that, one of the things is that when it becomes an issue of rules, the nice thing about games I'm part of, but also a 4D style, is you just make it happen and debate it later. You know what I mean? Kind of make it go and talk about it in feedback. And, I think that, when people sort of adopt games for other reasons, then immersion or, for lack of a better way to say it, into the role play aspect, I think that they get hung up on the rules because that might be their jam. That might be their thing.
Yeah. 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 So Z says, this is why he's indicating me, I'm the 4D scholar and he is the 4D Buddha. I think that no truer labels exist in this regard. I do tend to do that. And I beat myself up when I get something quote unquote wrong. So that's actually very insightful comment.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, but I think to get to that mindset where you can let yourself just unfiltered, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
without an extraneous filter going, be your character, it would be for me the same way. I would be having a running dialogue about my own role play as I played, because you want to operate in the spirit of things, because you want to help other people with their, keeping their frame. And, you also want to experience that style in the way it's intended.
Yes, I agree. Going back to comments again. He says, we as a group get super upset when we watch RPG sessions on YouTube that teach decent players how to discard rules, talk out of character, tell IRL stories, and share memes. This is teaching new players bad habits. I agree with that. I think that it's quite obvious that I would agree with that. But yeah, it is teaching new players bad habits. And well, I'll just leave it at that. I think there's much more going on.
I was watching, I watched all the, I've watched almost all, because the most recent one that Table Runner Crispy did, I'm halfway through. I haven't gotten all the way through it.
Mm-hmm.
But the unsolicited advice pieces he does.
The MCDM? Is that
yeah,
the one?
That's the second one that he was doing. I'm halfway through that. But I've watched all the other ones. And, it's funny how when you take a lens of a different style of role play, how all these, for lack of a better way to say it, errors, right, stand out. These things that, to me would decrease the enjoyment. But once again, I think the other side of that is not everybody's shooting for a 4D style. People are shooting for, hopefully what they want out of the game, and hopefully that's compatible with what the other players want, and they're, and fun is emergent from experiencing what you're there for.
Yeah, like generally speaking, I will say that I like to play with people, right? Like my goal in playing a game, or at least one of my goals in playing a game, is to play with those people. Whether it's you or Chris or Heath or Crispy or whoever it is that I'm playing with, I want to play with those people. And so I am very comfortable playing in a game however they are most comfortable playing in the game. But I cannot tell you how many times I've been in the middle of a non-4D game and just thought to myself, what is even happening here? Why are they doing that? How come the GM is like it? I get really nitpicky. Now, in my head, I never vocalize this because I feel like that would be poor form, because they have invited me to their table, and this is the way they played their game, and I'm happy to be there with those people and participate. But even like for as exhausting as 4D can be, at least at this point in my RPG situation.
Sorry, that's my dog Henry seeing apparently someone on our property that shouldn't be there.
Hey, Henry's a good dog for barking.
Yes, he's letting me know. I'm sorry.
But, no, it's quite all right. It's quite all right. So like once you are exposed to this particular type of play, this style, it does sort of infiltrate the rest of the games that you might play that aren't in this style.
Oh yeah, I can see that. Yeah. I mean, it's given me a type of self-reflection. Just learning about the style has given me a type of self-reflection on my own role play when it comes up all the time. So it's been, that's why I think one of the things is that even if you aren't playing a 4D style game, there's really great elements to take from that style to inform your own role play, or to inform your own sort of look at your own role play.
Yes. And Uriah says, what we seek to do with 4D is to show people that there is a different way of doing things. It was truly an epiphany finding out about the 4D style. It is a paradigm shift. It's absolutely a paradigm shift. Absolutely a paradigm shift. So,
yeah.
I know I said I was only going to take an hour, but there are a couple of things I want to return to. So,
please.
What was that word that you used that I now don't have in front of me regarding like making something second nature, what like 2 + 2
Automaticity.
Automaticity.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I've been using phrases like systems familiarity, system fluency, and I kind of want to maybe get into this now a little bit.
Okay.
So the object is, if you can excuse me adjusting myself in my chair, the object that this is something that's spoken about quite frequently in 4D circles. You have to be familiar with the system. You have to be like, because now that I know the technical term for it, automaticity absolutely has a positive effect on reducing roll distance.
Mm-hmm.
Because you don't have to find yourself, entrapped within a rules frame or a game frame trying to figure something out. There's no question to ask because you have such a high, and hopefully I'm using this correctly now, you have such high automaticity with regard to the systems, mechanics, and materials that you don't have to expend a lot of like mental real estate on making sure these things are getting done.
Right. The idea is that you reduce what's called cognitive load, right? The amount of effort your brain needs to spend on the material, right? And so you're reducing that cognitive load when you experience high automaticity because it, much like asking simple arithmetic questions, it just doesn't occupy a lot of sort of computational power, to say it, in a computer way. But yeah, and I think that would be critical in reducing roll distance because, and I think it's not just critical for the individual, but for everybody at the table, including the GM, because without that, when you throw out these terms or ideas sort of at the end of what you do or what your action is, the interpretation of it should also be likewise, have high automaticity so that you are able to make sense of it and then narrate your own result, or whoever's responsible for narrating that result can do so, or the GM narrating the success or whatever, however that's split within the group. But the idea, of course, is that the system's automaticity needs to be common to the group, not just to the individual.
Yeah.
Because without that, of course, then you struggle.
I have gotten such a kick out of this conversation, and I think that it is extremely valuable. I think that now we can point to this conversation among the 40 guys and say, see, we have a doctorate, someone who possesses a doctorate endorsing all of these different 4D behaviors and the results that they produce. I think that this has just been a really, really great conversation. For me, I imagine that it has been a great conversation for all of the 4D members who are here in chat as well, because again, I like to approach things in an academic way.
Mm-hmm. I
like to really know things, and hey, talking to a doctor, there's no way that I get more academic than this.
Sure.
I am very appreciative of our conversations, just to be a little, I don't know, gushy at the end here. Very appreciative of our conversations. I really do hope that we continue to move forward. I'd love to have more, if we can come up with a topic, I'd love to have more conversations with you on a live stream. I am very invested in what you currently have going on, what you've shown me. I'm
happy to come back. Yeah.
I'm over the moon about that. So thank you, Mike. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you, everyone in chat. What's this for, huh? What's this for? Hey, Brian, thanks for showing up. So I think we're at time, right? We're about ready to cross the 60-minute threshold. I don't want to take more of your time. I said an hour. Want to be respectful of that. I was even leery that we were going to come in under an hour. So, hey, thank you, Dave. Appreciate it. I agree. I'm actually going to, once I take the stream down, I'm probably going to send him an invite to the Discord, and I would love to get him in a game that's pure 4D. So that will be discussed, Nicholas. Again, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Mike. I don't know if there's anything that you want to say. Is there some place that people can find you, Twitter, Facebook, is there someplace that you want to be found? Maybe there isn't.
No. So I mean, I'm on Discord, on a few Discords, and if I'm invited to join a 4D Discord, I'll join that, of course. So you'll be able to find me there. But I don't have much of a social media presence beyond that. But I wanted to let everybody know I appreciate anybody who tuned in or watches this later. It's one of those things where I get to talk to classes, I get to talk to other people, but I rarely get to take my interests with my field and combine them into a discussion. And so it's been really enjoyable. And I'm hoping that we'll have other conversations at the intersection of psychology and games. It would be, I think these things are, I mean, for me, they're kind of fun.
I agree. I think they're really, really fun. And I think that it really establishes something that I think is sorely lacking in the tabletop role-playing game space, or has been lacking in the space. I said to you behind the scenes before we started, but I think that role-playing games deserve to be critically examined on that same level as film and literature and video games and music. And so that's really kind of what the goal is. Now, I'm no doctor. I don't have a doctorate in anything, but I really think that games can and should be taken more seriously. It's serious fun, right?
Yeah,
serious.
Yeah. Well, it's I want to put this out there. I don't think it requires any sort of advanced education to look into games, take them seriously, examine them from various lenses of different academic, interrogation, if you will. I think the process of doing so is all learning about this thing that we all enjoy. So there's no you've heard me say throughout our conversations, I don't have a lock on the truth, or I'm just flirting with ideas. And that's a lot of, what needs to happen is people to put out ideas, to, have discussions about those ideas so that we start developing this common language and understanding of, experiences that we're all having at our tables.
Yeah. Awesome. Oh, hey, this is Z, actually. I meant to click on Conway, but I feel weird that people, even in our 4D circles, push back that role-playing has artistic expression. Role-playing is this. Oh, this was a response to Conway. So thank you for showing up, Conway. I really appreciate your attendance here. Seeing as how early wargamers appropriated the role-playing term from the field of psychology, you could argue that the two are tied. RPGs are still not art, though. And then here is his response to that. I get it now. I get it. All right. Again, thank you, everyone. I do appreciate the viewership. I appreciate the interaction, the comments. I do hope that you, Mike, found this worthwhile. I hope the chat found this worthwhile. The 40 guys found it worthwhile. I thought it was a really great conversation. I think that there's some really strong justifications for the approaches that the 4D players take. I'm really excited to move forward with this type of conversation. So again, Mike, thank you so much. And everyone, please do like and subscribe. I guess I should start saying that. I said it for a little while and then stopped, but thank you, PH. Thank you, everyone. And I'll see us all in the next one. Take care.
Is this where we look stupid now for a moment?
Yeah, I'm going to click the button.